Today, we're fortunate enough to have with us John T. Meyer, an absolute South Dakota powerhouse. John is the type of leader, entrepreneur, and human we should all strive to be. He's not a gatekeeper, but he's always at the ready and willing to open the gate and offer a hand up to others. Can you guys tell I'm a little excited? John T. Meyer is on a mission to inspire others to be the best versions of themselves. John has spent the last 15 years learning leadership on the job by trying, making mistakes, and pushing himself and his team to be better every day. Currently, John is the executive director of the Leadership South Dakota, and he coaches founders through his company, Lead More. In 2011, John co-founded Lemonly, a design firm that helps the world's best brands like Netflix, Marriott, Major League Baseball, and Google tell their stories. As Lemonly's CEO, John built a strong company culture, gaining regional and national attention and becoming one of the best places to work in the Midwest. John is married to his wife, Paige Pearson Myers, and loves being a girl dad to Margot and Liv. John enjoys running, travel, and finding the next big idea. Following his remarks, we will have time for some Q&A. But I told him earlier, he's in the right place if he likes to know the next big idea. Please help me welcome John T. Meyer to the stage.
Perfect. Well, hello. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. I think Katie's right. I probably just found some of the next big ideas. Anytime I get to spend time around high school kids, I always get really excited about the future, right? Hello, Ag. I'm ready to invest in that idea. I know media, and I think that's a really good idea. All right. So better every day is this mantra that I live by that I want to talk about, and I have a few stories, a few lessons, and some sort of rules of life that I want to share. And let me first say I'm so jealous. I saw on the list, we have a bobcat in the room. Brookings? No? Okay, there was one on the list, but I grew up in Brookings, and we didn't have anything like this when I was in high school. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was until my junior year of college. And so I'm really jealous, and this is awesome that you guys have this opportunity. All right, so this is my first day of entrepreneurship picture. So moms and dads in the room, right? How we post, we prop our kids up, we give them the little chalkboard, and then we have first day of school type of thing. That's what my mom did when I started. This is in the cul-de-sac in Brookings where I grew up. My brother and I, we got a grant through the state of South Dakota, an economic development grant, $15,000, which we thought was big time money. And I moved back home to South Dakota, and we started a business. This is in 2009. Also, funny story, one of the guys in our cohort, I don't know if you remember this, also had the GPS arrow idea. And I bring that up because it's not a new idea, but they didn't make it. So ultimately, I know this is the big idea competition, but the TLDR is execution always wins. So you should go build that idea. It's a really good idea. Just thought that was a full circle moment 15 years later. So we got $15,000. We moved back home to South Dakota, and I'm trying to dress up with what I thought an entrepreneur looked like in June of 2009, like a hipster tee and an oversized sport coat that didn't really fit me. This is the most awkward picture of me on the internet, and there's a few. But I'm not waving at my mom. I'm actually holding up the number 5. This is for our first check, $5,000. We got our first. It's kind of like that Chamber of Commerce picture, right? When you get your first check. And so I tell this story because my entrepreneurial journey is very accidental. Like I said, I didn't even know, what it meant. I kind of accidentally became an entrepreneur because I didn't want to do what I was doing for my job. So I graduated from college in Northeast Iowa. I moved up to Minneapolis, and I was a consultant, a corporate consultant for a company called Accenture. Basically, I did a lot of pivot tables and Excel spreadsheets. And I moved to Minneapolis after college. I was getting paid $50,000, and I thought that I had made it because I got to live in the cities. I'm a big Twins fan. And I remember thinking, I've made it. This is great. And about 3 months later, I was like, all I do is Excel spreadsheets. Call me a millennial, but I felt like I had a greater purpose. And I remember calling my dad, and I said, Dad, I think I'm going to quit my job. And so he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I think I might start my own thing. Well, what? And I was like, I have no idea, but I'll just figure it out, right? And any for the parents in the room, my dad said, why don't you try to stick it out for a year? That might look good on your resume, which is the total dad thing to say. And now I'm a dad, and I wonder what I will say if my daughter calls me in a few years. I made it 11 months, and then my brother and I got this grant, and we moved back home. So that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. But because of that, then I got to do, this, which the first company led to the second company, Lemonly. And I ran that company for 10 years. We built that up to 20 employees and worked with some of the world's best brands to tell their story, and sold that company in 2021. So each step along the journey is just, one step closer to where you think, maybe you don't even think where you want to go, but you just keep learning and you keep going. So that's some of the lessons I want to talk about today. Other titles that I have, besides being an entrepreneur, probably my most important is a husband and a father. It's my wife, Paige. My daughters, Margot and Liv. We're big Jax fans. I run a company called Leadmore. And I also get to run a program called Leadership South Dakota. Katie's an alumni. Keisha, I saw a few alumni in the crowd. So what I wanted to talk about to start with today is this sort of accidental entrepreneur idea. So it might seem like I knew what I was trying to do, but often you'll hear the question, are entrepreneurs born or are they made, right? So I don't know what you guys think. I think you can argue both sides. If you've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, did you pick the flowers out of your neighbor lady's house and then bring them back to her front door and sell them to her, right? That's like the entrepreneurs that are born. I don't know if I was really born an entrepreneur. My earliest kind of idea of an entrepreneur in middle school, I went to high school with this guy named Reza. Does anyone know Reza? He's a magician from Brookings. He's probably like the most famous person from my high school class. And in sixth grade, Reza was doing magic from a young age, and he had this magic trick. It was like a card disappearing trick. And the best negotiation kind of entrepreneurial skill I had was I convinced him, I'll do your homework if you teach me how that magic trick works. And so I did his history homework, and he gave me that magic trick. And then I laughed because now he's trying to become David Copperfield. So I think in this case, I was not born an entrepreneur. I just learned it as I go in different lessons. A key moment for me, let's see here, there we go, was when I met this guy. In my junior year of college, I took an entrepreneurship class. Now, for you guys in high school, if you go to college, I don't recommend majoring in entrepreneurship. I would go learn a specialty or learn a skill. You can do a minor, but you are already doing the most important thing in entrepreneurship, which is starting a business. That's how you learn. I always say being an entrepreneur is like getting an MBA, an accelerated MBA. You will learn so fast because guess what? When you start a company, you have to be the CFO. You're the CEO. You're the COO. You're the CMO. You got to do all the jobs when you start a company. So you will learn really quickly. So I didn't learn a ton in that entrepreneurship class, but what they did is every week they had a speaker come in, a local entrepreneur, and this guy came up and spoke. His name's Jason Trout. And he talked about, this is like 2007 or 6. He talked about working on his laptop, and sometimes he worked downtown in his office, and sometimes he worked at home, and he was building Google Ads. This is early days, like online advertising. And the whole thing just kind of blew my mind of what was possible at that point. I mean, you guys have grown up in an era where literally your customers and businesses are the entire world. But it wasn't always that way. And I remember meeting Jason and thinking, this is so amazing. And so when the bell rang and everybody left the room, I walked up to him and I said, hey, have you ever thought about having an intern? And Jason said, meet me tomorrow at the coffee shop. So I put on my oversized suit that didn't fit, and I printed all of my resumes and put them in a pad folio. You probably don't even know what that is. And I brought that, and I was ready for an interview with this guy, Jason. And I was all kind of nervous and hoping I was going to get the job. And he had said, okay, I set up your email address, watch these 2 YouTube videos, and read these 3 articles. And he had just given me the internship, only because I asked. That's all I did was I just asked. And that moment changed my life because I realized you could be an entrepreneur, and I got to watch from Jason. I got to see it. And I'm just so grateful for that opportunity. And I do have to share this just because I feel like it's a little bit serendipitous. So Kelly, my slides weren't, some of the slides didn't work. And so because I had some old pictures. I don't always tell this story. But one of the things I'm learning in Leadership South Dakota is to be a little more vulnerable. And so I found this, I had to go back to find this old picture of Jason because it wasn't in my old slide deck. So I Googled his name just this morning, honestly. And I learned that Jason passed away a couple years ago. I just learned this morning. And I feel really bad about it because I didn't check in on him. I didn't touch base with him. And this guy changed my life. And so I just want to tell that story because it's a little sidebar from entrepreneurship, but check up on the people that you care about and that you love. And also know that one person, like one interaction, can change your life. So ask the question, stand up, don't be afraid, and just cherish every one of those relationships. So shout out to Jason. All right, so I had to just tell that story. Now I want to share a few rules. Hopefully these will inspire you or kind of give you permission. Because as I think back on that story with Jason, or even the $15,000 grant through South Dakota, what really those moments were in my life was somebody saying, go for it. I believe in you. So like whether you won today or honorable mention or didn't get anything, I'm here to tell you, go for it. Like, again, the ideas, frankly, a dime a dozen. This idea existed 15 years ago and it still isn't existing in the market. Someone's got to go do it. So execution, determination, you have the permission, and I'm telling you, go now, right? So here are the 8 rules that I try to live by and embody. The first is this concept of anti-fragile. I don't know if you've ever heard of this concept. It was written by this author. It's a book called Anti-Fragile, this guy Nassim Taleb. And my wife and I are trying to raise our children in a very anti-fragile way. This is our daughter, Liv. She just turned 5 a couple weeks ago. This is an old picture. But she's a very stubborn kid, is how I would say it. She loves to just like dive down the driveway on her scooter or jump in the deep end of the pool, go and knock on doors and ask neighbors if friends can come out and play. She's very fearless, and we love that about her. But this also means, whether it be the pool or the driveway, that we end up falling, like skidding our knees a lot. So we use these a ton in our household. These are just like fancy Band-Aids, right? Every entrepreneur has an idea, like a swipe file of ideas, things like, oh shit, I wish I would have thought of that. So this entrepreneur, they went down the pharmacy aisle. They took like the most boring product that hadn't changed in forever, like the beige Band-Aid. They put some cool designs on it. They put it in this like retro tin can, and then they charged 3-4 times more than a regular Band-Aid. My wife buys them all the time. But that's okay, because when my daughter falls down, I put a Band-Aid. I mean, I put Band-Aids on cuts and bruises on, like, honestly, when there's nothing. We just put a Band-Aid on it. Because it's this concept of like a hug, right? Like dad picking you up, a warm hug saying, you got this, go for it, keep going. And that's this concept of anti-fragile, becoming anti-fragile where difficult times actually make you stronger. And so I wanted to define it for you. In the book, they say some things benefit from shock. They thrive and they grow when exposed to volatility, randomness, and disorder. They love adventure, risk, and uncertainty. That's entrepreneurship. There's no word for the opposite of fragile, so let's call it anti-fragile. Anti-fragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resist shock and stay the same, but the anti-fragile get better. So really, that's like the core fiber of my belief is this idea we have to become more anti-fragile. We have to embrace adventure, risk, and uncertainty. And now's the time to do it. You have so little to lose to start a business and to become an entrepreneur today. So that's Liv. Think of Liv when you need a little bit more encouragement and becoming a little more anti-fragile. All right, related to that, this idea of we can do hard things. This is a sort of a philosophy that we've tried to adopt in our family, and I try to push people at Leadership South Dakota. I say, you're going to get uncomfortable, for sure, right? I got 40 state government employees to do improv. They were very uncomfortable. So I went and did this thing this summer called the Dairy Dash, and I brought my girls with me, and they ran a mile. I didn't run a mile until I was like in 7th grade or 6th, whatever year you have to run a mile in like PE class. My daughter was 4 and 7. And Liv had actually just broke her collarbone, speaking of anti-fragile. She ran it, though, with her little brace. So do hard things. Like, become the type of person, when things get hard, you raise your hand, and you say yes. You'll get far in life. Don't waste a good crisis. It's a Churchill quote that I always love. I told my team at Lemonly when the pandemic hit, right? So we do a couple million in revenue every year. The pandemic hits, and for 2 weeks, we had no clients, no business. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought it might just shut down. I wasn't sure. And I said, we're not going to waste a good crisis, because the opportunity to change, to do whatever we wanted, to change the business, to fire some clients or get new clients or rework our operations was just served to us on a silver platter, and now we can do whatever we want. So don't waste a good crisis. Vote for you. This is probably the most important. If someone would have told me this when I was your guys' age, this probably would have changed my life. It's this idea. I'll tell the story first. Kobe Bryant, right? You guys know Kobe? So Kobe Bryant, in I think 2008-9, he broke his wrist during the season, maybe 10, I can't remember. And so he was hurt for a while, and then when he came back, all of his shooting percentages were down that year because when he came back, he was sort of overcompensating on his shot because he rushed back and it still was healing. So that offseason, he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make 100,000 shots this summer. Not take, but make 100,000 shots. The offseason's about 100 days long, roughly. So he was going to make 1,000 shots every single day. That would take me forever, to make. I couldn't even take 100,000 shots. And so Kobe literally, wrote memory, just retrained his hand back to the right spot on the ball. And guess what? That fall, his shooting percentages came back up in line with his career averages. So every day he did the work. Every day he got the shots. And so there's this really, really good book, I actually make everybody at Leadership South Dakota read it, called Atomic Habits. And it's this idea of habits start with discipline. And before you say, I want to run a 10K or I want to start a business, you say, I want to become a runner. I want to become the type of person I want to be an entrepreneur, right? Embrace the titles or the labels and then do the work that type of person would do. So every day you wake up early, maybe you get your shots up, or you work on your business, or you reach out to customers. That is a vote for the type of person you want to become. So your habits, your discipline, your routines, it's like casting a vote every day. And you get to vote for yourself, for who you want to be. All right, the next idea is to stand for something. To really believe in something and stand for it. We have some other entrepreneurs I know in the room, they understand this idea. So at Lemonly, when you came into the office, kind of old warehouse, kind of old downtown office building in Sioux Falls, we had this kind of school vibe. So we had these yellow lockers, and above we had these pennants. And these are our core values: adventure, collaboration, and integrity. These are the three things we believe to the fiber of our being, right? This is how we would hire people. This is how we would promote and celebrate. And if we had to, how we'd fire somebody or let someone go. When you know what you stand for, a lot of things just get much easier, right? You're wondering, should we work with this type of business? Here's a PR crisis. How should we respond? You go back to what you stand for. You go back for what you believe in. We knew that we wanted to collaborate not just with our clients, but with the community of Sioux Falls, with South Dakota, with each other as a creative agency. We were going to always do the right thing and treat people the way we wanted to be treated. That's integrity. And we were going to get a little uncomfortable. We were going to take some risk and grow, adventure. And so by doing that, not only am I telling my team members what we believe in, but now all of you guys even have an idea or a sense of what it might be like to work at Lemonly, right? When you stand for something, you know who you are. And so these companies that you guys pitched just now are at the idea phase, but if they become real, decide what you want to stand for and what you believe in, because it'll make the rest of your trajectory a lot easier. If anyone's ever seen the Nike movie, Air, they show this in the movie. This is the original copy of Phil Knight's, essentially sort of mantras, or I don't know if they call them core values or just fundamental beliefs. These ideas are critical kind of at the core DNA of what Nike is, who they are, and what they stand for. I love this document. It's really cool. It tells you exactly who they are. It inspires you, right? Your core values can even attract customers. Because just to the point earlier about becoming the type of person, Nike is attracting a belief, a type of person who wants to wear Nikes or run in their shoes or be like Michael Jordan, right? All right, create problems. This is my permission. Do we have the teachers in the room too? A few of the teachers as well as the students. Sorry, teachers. I always encourage folks to go create problems. Go mess things up. I'm a foodie, and my wife and I, when we travel, we like to go find cool restaurants. And we've been to Denmark, unfortunately, to Copenhagen. We didn't get to go to this restaurant. It's called Noma, and it was twice, maybe 3 times voted world's best restaurant. And they bring all these tiny little bites and really crazy dishes and creatures and things that you eat, weird foraging vegetables. But one thing they do once a month on Saturday night, or probably Sunday morning, late in the night, after a full weekend of serving and running the restaurant, they do this thing called project nights. And anybody who wants to in the restaurant is invited to come pitch a taste or a dish or a bite. And so you could be like the sous chef, you could be on the expo line, or you could be like the dishwasher guy. And you still get to come up and just like try something and pitch an idea. And I love this concept. It's this idea, it's innovation at its core. Anybody has an idea. Anybody can pitch something, a suggestion, a thought, just a taste or a bite, and many of these things end up making it on the menu, right? And become like signature dishes. And so go create problems, like try something, mix something, mix peanut butter and jelly, or whoever did that first, and find something good. We tried to do that at Lemonly, this concept of sort of hackathons or innovation. Whoops. So once a year at Lemonly, we would shut down the office for 24 hours. We'd email all of our clients and say, hey, you're not going to hear from us for 24 hours. And I'd have one assignment to the whole team. I'd say the one task was make Lemonly better. We'd give them about $50, which usually got spent on probably beer, to be honest. And we said, 24 hours from now, come back and pitch an idea to make Lemonly better. So we put them in teams, and very similar to what you guys are doing, just no beer money included. And they would come back the day, and even like the presentation of it became a big part, right? That was like part of our culture, the adventure. It became like this dramatic script reading here of their idea. So let people decide, let people create problems, let people mess things up and just see, what if, right? What if we tried this? What if we, didn't waste a good crisis? What if we changed things up? What could happen? All right, get stuff done. Pretty straightforward, but when I talk about execution versus ideas, it usually comes down to this. Another really good book that I love is this book called The Culture Code. And in this book, this guy, Coyle, he studies organizations that have succeeded for long periods of time. So like sports, business, even things like the Navy SEALs, and looked at like what was the characteristics of these organizations that had them succeed for long periods of time. It wasn't just they had a star player or the market or the industry was really hot for a few years. Like companies like GE that were successful for long times, or one of the groups he looks at is the San Antonio Spurs. They've had some Hall of Fame players, but not like a Michael Jordan, LeBron James type of player. But I think like 17 out of 20 years they've made the playoffs. So it's this sustained success. Coach Popovich, great coach, he's a military guy. And when you walk into in the book, they talk about the story. When you walk into the Spurs practice facility, behind glass, there's this big, big rock. And then there's this sledgehammer right next to it. And the story goes that like the stone worker comes to work every day, he picks up the big hammer, and he bangs the rock. So he picks up this hammer, and he crushes the rock and bangs against the rock. Every day he does that, time and time again. Grab the hammer, bang the rock, grab the hammer, bang the rock. And so the legend says, on the 100th blow, on the 100th strike of picking up this hammer and banging the rock, it splits in half. Splits right down the middle, breaks in two pieces. And so then they ask, was it the 100th blow that crushed the rock, or was it the 99 before? And I don't know about you, but I certainly subscribe to it was the 99 before. It was showing up, doing the work, and in the practice facility, it's the context of like Kobe, right? Getting your shots up, showing up, doing your workout, lifting weights when you probably don't want to, eating right, whatever it might be, and doing the work. It's getting stuff done. I saw a recent article this summer. Obama and Inc. said his advice to young professionals, he said, I spent a lot of time in a lot of rooms with a lot of people who have a lot of ideas, and they always want to comment on ideas, and they want to talk about ideas, and they have solutions to problems, but rarely do people want to do the work. And so his 3 words were, get stuff done. That's his career advice. Take it or leave it. I agree with it. The next one, and this is a fun time in your life when you're young and you're still trying to figure this answer out, but I always like to ask on my podcast, what is your superpower? What's the one thing you do better than anyone else? So this is one of my favorite, you can tell I like sports, one of my favorite graphics. Ted Williams, one of the greatest living hitters of all time. He created this image himself. He took a baseball-sized the size of a baseball, and divided up the strike zone into 66 baseball-sized areas. And he estimated, what would my batting average be if I only swung at pitches right here in this spot? And when you're Ted Williams, even your cold areas are 300. But Ted Williams, one of the greatest hitters ever, knew exactly what pitch to swing at, right? This is the classic idea of swing at your pitch, right? For moms and dads, if you have sons or daughters, it's wait for your pitch, right? As they just watch them go by. This is that concept. If you know your superpower, swing at your pitch, grab the bat, and swing as hard as you can when it's your pitch. And I think in society, and maybe a little bit in education, we spend a lot of time, and I went to a liberal arts school, this idea of let's be well-rounded in everything. And I think entrepreneurs actually strive or succeed when they are really in their zone of genius, when they're working in their superpower. So I love the idea of doubling down on your strengths, punt on your weaknesses. And what that means in business is find someone else who can take that idea, right? Your co-founder, your business partner. I saw a few groups up here pitch together, right? If you find somebody to build with you who complements your skills, that's great. All right. And the last one is no small plans. If we're going to do something, let's do it big, right? Let's make it worthy. Let's dream big. Here we are at the big idea competition. No small plans. A couple stories of that. A couple years ago, for my birthday in August, I got to do this event called 29029. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. The number is the equivalent of feet of elevation in Mount Everest, so 29,029 feet. I didn't do it at Mount Everest. Mount Everest, that takes several months, thousands and thousands of dollars, and you might die. So I didn't pitch that one to my wife. But I went to Utah and paid maybe $2,000 and had to go up and down a ski mountain 13 times. So you had 36 hours to hike up this ski mountain, take the gondola down, and then hike up again, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth 13 times in 36 hours. It was really hard. But it's this idea of it was over my birthday. I was if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it big, right? No small plans. And amazing story. So in this event, we have these little white bibs, really well-run event. On the front, you have your name, and then on the back, you have your name. So as you're hiking up, if you're at the aid station or someone's passing you, they can see your name and say, hey, John, keep it up, keep going, good work, don't stop. So awesome kind of community building and support. And then on your final hike, the 13th summit, they give you the red bib. And so you put that over top of your white one. And guess what? Even though my legs were tired, and I've been doing this awake for 24 straight hours, the 13th hike was my fastest one, right? You knew you were almost done. You had the red bib. Everyone's cheering you on. And one of my favorite stories is, I think about summit, maybe 7 or 8, I ran into this woman from Florida, and we were making small talk, and that was the best way to pass time, was just to talk while you were walking and didn't know your soreness. And she said, oh, I think I met someone else from South Dakota. And I was like, no way. I'm the only person who's ever done this from South Dakota, right? And she's like, no, I'm pretty sure I did. And I was on the look for this person. And a couple hikes later, at an aid station, I saw this woman. And she turned around, and I went to high school with her. She was from Brookings. What's more South Dakota than that, right? Here is this woman in Utah, also no small plans, doing the hike. So community really can lift you up and get a lot of hard things done. This summer, I got to do something that really did change my life. I ran across the state of South Dakota. You can kind of see a theme here. I like to do physical challenges. Is a really good way to test sort of your mental strength. And so there was 12 of us, and we ran across the state of South Dakota. Not the whole way. We did it as a relay. We went the whole way, but we took turns. And we raised $250,000 for mental health and suicide prevention. It's called the 437 Project. And the idea is if we can run across South Dakota to raise awareness and raise money for this really important topic. And I'll be honest, I was attracted to the physical challenge, and I thought, yeah, this is probably a good topic. This is a great cause. I'm happy to help. I finished thinking this is the cause. Mental health and suicide prevention is the most important cause. When someone's sick, we often can see that they're sick, right? And we check in on them. But if someone's not well in their head, we don't always know that. And so, again, we need to check in on people. And so if you're going to do something, do it big. And I always tell young entrepreneurs in Sioux Falls, I always say, if you're thinking about starting a business, don't have coffee with me, because I will convince you to do it, right? And I'm so grateful that I started my business at 23 years old. You guys are younger than that, because I had nothing to lose, right? Like, worst case scenario, I could probably go back to a job sort of like Accenture for $50,000 and do pivot tables. But that next year, I made $20,000 starting a business, and it was like the best year of my life, right? There's the line about entrepreneurs are crazy enough to work 80 hours a week so that they don't have to work 40 for somebody else, right? So no small plans. If you're going to do it big. You have nothing to lose. You have so much life left to live. You have the most valuable asset, which is your time. All right, so these are my rules. How are we doing on time? Okay, great. We're doing okay. Become anti-fragile. Do hard things. Make sure to wake up every day and make a vote for you. If you're going to do something, stand for it. Believe in what believe in what you're doing. Go create problems, mess things up, try things, take risks. Get stuff done every day. Show up, get stuff done. That's those 3 words. Find your superpower and really embrace and lean into that superpower. And if you're going to do something, make it big. So before we take some questions, I'll end with this last thought. How many of you are going to actually turn do you think you'll turn your idea into a business? I'm going to put you on the spot here. Raise your hands. Okay, well, this guy is, because I'm investing in his company. So you should do it. I really think you should do it, even if it's not that idea. I don't know what the criteria or the rules were for the competition. But like I said, you will find that starting a business, you'll learn a lot about yourself, and you'll grow a ton. And so whether it's today or not, you might say, one day I'm going to do this. And this advice applies to anybody in the audience. Whether it be one day I'm going to run across the state of South Dakota, or one day I'm going to start a business, or one day I'm going to learn how to play guitar, or call that loved one who sort of our relationship sort of has ended. What I would encourage you to push yourself to think and maybe rephrase that. Instead of it being one day, maybe it could be day one. This is day one of becoming an entrepreneur, or day one of running that 5K, or day one of becoming the type of person you want to become, right? Just invert that and think of each day as an opportunity. All right, so with that, let's take some questions. Thank you.
Excellent. I mean, I don't know if I could physically run through a brick wall, but I think I'm ready.
You can do it.
All right. Well, now it's your turn. Please, we have microphones down here at the front of the room. Please come to the microphone in the aisle to ask your questions so that those that are joining us online can hear your question. We'll get started with a couple of questions that were submitted by our students earlier in the day, and then we'll turn to the audience for more. John, what has been your greatest failure?
My greatest failure. I think the thing that I'm most proud of in my time at Lemonly is the team members. We've had, not only for their accomplishments while at Lemonly, but we've had a lot of folks go on to do great things, whether start companies. We have employees who now work at Microsoft and Facebook. But there's been a few times when it didn't work out with an employee. And a couple, maybe once it was a behavioral them problem. But I'd say a couple times it was like we failed them. Whether it was, I'm a big believer in clarity. Most expectations, relationships, jobs, if they fall apart or fracture, it's because of lack of clarity, lack of understanding the expectations or the rules or whatever it might be. And so there's a couple examples where I just felt like we let them down on the clarity of an expectation and what we expected them to do and what their job was at Lemonly and how they should do it. And so I take those ones to heart, because when you kind of sit at that table and you tell someone it's not going to work out here anymore, I wear that as a heavy burden and responsibility. I've had failed startups. Those are not my greatest failures, right? Like, if you ask any entrepreneur who's been in the game for a while, you'll hear about the ones that work, but there's usually a laundry list of ones that don't work before. And that does not bother me at all, right? That's just the lessons. That's just if you can do them, the idea of fail fast, the faster you fail, the faster you can learn. So if these ideas don't work, don't quit. Come back again with a new idea.
Excellent. I will remind you that these microphones are open to anyone in the room, students, guests, educators? If you guys don't start asking questions, I'm going to have to
Keep
make
going,
them up.
keep going.
All right. Who is your biggest inspiration or mentor?
Well, I have to say, like, Jason Trout was a big influence for me to, I say, so we talked about superpower. My superpower is to get other people to believe that they're capable of more. And so it fits nice. You're alumni of Leadership South Dakota. That's sort of like my job as the director of that group. And so I want to inspire folks to believe that they're capable of more. And so, like in the physical challenge stories, usually our brain stops at about 40 to 50% and says, like, oh, I can't go any further. And typically, like science proves this, that we stop at usually about half of what we actually can do. So that's the physical part. But the real burden, the real blocker is mentally. And so I feel like my goal, my superpower is to get people to believe that they're capable. And so what Jason did when he said, watch these videos and read these articles, he said, go for it. Like, take your chance. So he's somebody that certainly stands out. And then I would say my wife, probably the most important decision you're going to make in your life is who you choose to spend your time with, particularly probably your partner. So making sure you get that decision right, I would focus more time on getting that decision right because it'll impact the rest of your life.
I would agree. We have lots of future workforce sitting right in front of you. Can you describe your ideal employee?
Yeah, that's awesome. Great question. So what's cool about core values is you can kind of triangulate, right? So at Lemonly, it was someone who was willing to collaborate, someone who had integrity, would do the right thing, and was willing to take risk, be adventurous. I would say, personally, I'd carry through many of those same responsibilities. I always said on anybody's first day, this was a culture of ask for forgiveness instead of permission, right? At the end of the day, we were making JPEGs, right? Like, we were a design agency making JPEGs that tell stories. Like, we're not saving anyone's life here, right? So let's try some things. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's push ourselves. Let's take a risk. And so I would always say that on day one. Every summer we do interns. We have interns from they still do at Lemonly. And that was one of the first kind of rah-rah speeches, is like, take risks, ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And the best employees actually took that to heart and ran with that idea. They came back like, hey, we created this thing and wanted to show it to you. Like, what do you think? Versus waiting to be told, yes, you can do that. It's okay. Go ahead. So I would say that is a characteristic that I really look for in employees. Good question, Katie.
Excellent. I have one final question. So if you have a burning question, you're going to need to run to the podium.
I'm an open book. I'll talk about whatever.
All right. John, what do you think the biggest challenge facing entrepreneurs today is?
I don't know if this is the biggest challenge, but one of the hardest things is how fast the world is moving. And so I'll come back to what I think is probably the biggest challenge, but one of the hardest, whether it be AI or globalization, supply chain, is like the world is moving so fast. I'd like to think that I'm still young and in the entrepreneur game, but I realize when I have a picture from 2009, like I've been around the block a few times now, and it just felt more manageable back then. There's just so much information, and the beauty is that you guys actually, your generation, like, kind of grew up with the internet, right? Like, I'm a millennial, so I can remember life before. I remember more middle school friends' house phone numbers than I do, like, my wife's cell phone number, and that definitely ages me. But I kind of straddled both eras of my life, like pre-internet and post. But today, you guys are digitally native, and the world is moving so fast. Like with this AI stuff in particular, what you're seeing from 12 months ago is drastically different. And the whole point of AI is that it's teaching itself. And so what we're going to see another 12 months from now, most of us can't even fathom. So I'm a father. I have a 8-year-old. One of my favorite stats is they say that if you're younger than 5th grade, 50% of the jobs that'll be available to Margot when she graduates don't yet exist. So if I sit down with her and I'm at nighttime and I'm like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? Do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, an astronaut, an athlete? All the options I'm giving her, there's another half of the options that I don't even know what to call those things yet. And I saw this when I teach JA at her class in Sioux Falls at Junior Achievement, and I asked kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And of course, when we were young, it was like astronaut and police officer, president. It was like YouTuber and influencer. And I know that some people groan at that, and they're like, oh, kids these days. Like, I don't care. I think that's great, right? Like, these are the jobs that they are seeing. They can now create a possibility, a world from their laptop at home. That's why, you should go build this Hello Egg thing, because you can. I totally see a world where that's a very profitable YouTube channel and media company. And so I think it's really cool, but keeping up is really, really hard because it's going so fast. And so I guess to bring that around, I think the biggest challenge entrepreneurs face today is probably focus, because it's really hard to be committed to an idea or a challenge or a problem for long periods of time. And so if you can put blinders on and know what's our problem, who's our customer, and how do we help them, you can be successful. But so with coaching, the line I often use in coaching is most businesses die of indigestion and not starvation. Meaning, when we hit a challenge, we try to do more. Let's try a new thing. Let's launch a new product. Let's add a new service. Let's do some new marketing. And honestly, we probably need to do less. And so it's not that we are starving. It's that we're trying to do too much. Hey, I know you. Good to see you.
Good to see you, John. Question for you. When you sold your business, okay, obviously it was a big part of your life for a long time. How'd you figure out what to do afterwards? Well, how long did it take you, and what was the process? And are you done being an entrepreneur? I know you're currently working, but obviously not of your own design. But
yeah. Good question. Yeah, absolutely right. So selling your company, part of the reason why I think Lemonly worked was it was a big, big part of who I was, right? If you came to my house in Sioux Falls, we have a yellow door at my house. We were all in, right? To the point, it was who I was, which also kind of made me nervous. I didn't want to forever be the Lemonly guy, and I wanted to write another chapter of my life. So sold it in 21, had a 12-month earn out, left in January of 22. At that time, I was kind of dabbling in the Web3 crypto space, and as I look back and reflect on it now, probably pretty much doing that because I was making money. I was flipping JPEGs and NFTs and making a lot of money at that time. And then in the summer, that all came crashing to a halt, because that's just where the market kind of went, and it made you stop and wonder why am I doing this? And the answer, I didn't have a really good answer other than I was making money, and I felt for a while, it seemed way back to 2000, I'd gone through a time machine, and I was back to when we started 9 Clouds, which is teaching businesses about social media. And we're going to teach businesses about blockchain. And every good entrepreneur, of course, thinks every idea they have is good. I was just too early, right? It wasn't the idea, it was just the timing. So 22 was a weird year, and I would say it took me almost a full year till in the fall, Rick, who we know, nudged me to apply for this job. And I was like, I don't know if I'm a nonprofit executive director. I'm an entrepreneur. And he's like, no, you should do this. You can really do a lot of good in our state. And so I applied for the job and started in January. But the reason I also took the job is I can also still have a business. So I would say I'm definitely never going to end as being an entrepreneur, and intend to keep. It just looks a little bit different now than it used to. And so the challenge of redoing it and doing it differently is really exciting to me. But what 2022 taught me, and I'm so grateful for, is we got to know why we're doing it, right, and what we're doing it for. So that was a good reset for me. I have no regrets on selling the company. I miss the people, the team, certainly. Nothing was wrong. We were growing. But then you also realize you go out and do something new and you meet other great people. There's just a lot of great people out there. So, especially in South Dakota. Leadership South Dakota has really sort of, for young folks in the audience, I grew up here. I was looking to get out of the state as fast as possible, right? And now, when I've been back, grown up a little bit, matured, South Dakota is a really unique place. It's a very special place. So I'm proud to get to. I used to travel to New York and LA and Austin for work, and now I travel to Brookings and Pierre and Chamberlain. And I love it. It's great. There's awesome places all over this state. Yes, ma'am.
begin to recognize what your superpower is?
Yeah, that's a good one. How do you know what your superpower is? So there's this concept in Japanese culture called ikigai, which is like this, it's like a Venn diagram. Essentially, the idea is like, what's something I'm good at and that people need? There's like a skill set that people need, and I have like a passion for it. And I often think the bad advice that you'll hear at entrepreneurial events and conferences is like, follow your passion, right? Follow your passion. And someone's like, I love cats, right? Like, I can't pay the bills because I love cats, right? So I think this concept of ikigai is like, what's something we're good at? Often if you're good at something, you, from a young age, you might excel at it. Like, you're fast, so you're the fastest kid on the playground. So then you go out for track, and you win the track races, so you get some medals, or you get some recognition, which feels good. Maybe you get a scholarship if you're really good. And so I often think skills beget passion, right? So if you're good at something, hopefully you pull on that thread, and it might lead you to a passion. And I think the part that the caveat that I would throw into your question is like, what's like uniquely you? So we do StrengthsFinder at Leadership South Dakota, which is a great assessment where you get these 5 words, these 5 adjectives that describe kind of your strengths. There's 34 different words. And that's where the twist on superpower is like, I'm good at it. People need my thing, but like it's also, I like the twist of like, what's kind of weirdly you, right? So like your superpower isn't, I'm positive. That's my number one strength, positivity. But my superpower is using that positivity so that other people can believe in themselves more, right? That's how I articulate that. Because I do think people need that. I think our world is in a shortage of belief. And there's this line that like pessimists look smart, but optimists make money. Because if we're gonna fix the world, and I'm trying to articulate this, like, if we're going to fix things, we have to be positive about how we can do that and have creative problem-solving solutions. And so it's just, the world is just a way better place to live in if you're an optimist and positive about it. So I think we're in a shortage of that, and that's sort of the need that I'm trying to fill in the world. So I would ask people, what do you think I'm good at? And I would ask, like, what's the thing I do best? And see how people answer that question. I bet the more you have that conversation, you'll start to hear some of the same words over and over. Good question.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, could we please give a room-filling round of applause for the real-life Ted Lasso,
Oh.
John Meyer.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.